If not, hopefully will be shortly. So otherwise, the roll call will be taken and she'll check back sooner or later. Next thing on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Supervisor Powers.
Creator of all things, fountain of all wisdom and peace, we remember before you nations at war and citizens injured and displaced. Soften the hearts of those who hate to learn to live in peace and unity with those who are nearby and those who are far off. Help world leaders find peaceful solutions and ways forward toward harmony and stability. Amen.
Supervisor Gabbert for the adoption of the agenda.
Adopt the agenda, but I have some corrections to make.
Okay.
Do you want me to do that right now, or do you want me to wait for a second?
You want to know?
Second.
Yeah. Okay.
Under the consent calendar, items 2 through 4, I'll say due to clerical error, but that's irrelevant. Every one of those items should read a mandatory ordinance zoning, and the dates are September 3rd and September 17th. Those were left off of each of those items, 2 through 4. Thank you.
Yes, Supervisor Cox.
Your approval of proceedings, not that dates behind it, you're approving the date of September 3rd and September 17th on your agenda.
The approval of the proceeding should be September 3rd and September 17th, not the just that. September 3rd and September 17th is right.
Okay, make sure she's got them. Okay, duly noted. Any other corrections? All right, a motion's been made and seconded. And along with the corrections that have been made to the adoptions of this evening's agenda, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. This time we'll have public comments from anyone in the back and on Zoom. We'll go ahead and we'll start with you. You'll have 2 minutes to stress anything that you'd like to speak to the Winnebago County Board on, anything to do in Winnebago County. If anyone would like to, just step up to the mic, state your name and address, and tell us what you'd like to say. Anyone? Anyone at all? Anyone on Zoom? Okay, that part is closed. Communication from the county clerk. Has none. Reports from committees, commissions, and board. Question from clerks. Yes. Well, I'm not either, so just hold on, please. I don't have any names coming up underneath it. Do you have any? Who do you have? Supervisor Powers? Supervisor Schellinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to report on the last meeting of the Parkview Health Center Committee meeting. At this committee, Meeting, we were presented with a report from Baker Tilly about the operations at Parkview. I had asked when the committee agenda came out that the material that was to be presented to the committee be provided in the board packet. It was not. I had to have follow-up conversations with the administrator and the executive in order to get the documents included for our meeting. When we got to the meeting, the presentation was significantly longer than the material presented to the board, to the public, to staff ahead of time. I questioned the administrator as to why we didn't have the full presentation ahead of time. You can, I would encourage folks to watch the full meeting, but you can certainly tune in at the 41-minute mark to hear me ask who made the decision to only share the first 5 slides with the committee, and for the answer to be that would be the executive's office. So the executive's office took about 10 slides from Baker Tilly and chopped it up and only provided 5 slides for the committee and for the public to review in advance. In the resulting presentation, we were presented with a whole bunch of scenarios for Parkview that are riddled with faulty assumptions about the financial status of Parkview. I'll call attention to 2 of those right now. First, the whole report used 2023 reimbursement levels. Between 2023 and 2024, we saw significant increases in the Medicaid reimbursement rates. I believe that the report was using the lower revenues intentionally to distort the financial picture at Parkview. It also assumes that the current challenges to staffing at Parkview would be constant, that there would not be ways to resolve the CNA shortages in CNAs, but the alternatives that Baker Tilly provided make no such assumptions about hiring lower wage positions into CBRF or other configurations at Parkview. So the assumptions that Baker Tilly makes about Parkview in its current status are always the most negative picture you could construe, and the scenarios that they paint are always glossing over the very real concerns that we have at Parkview at the moment. As we get through to the budget at the end of the month, we're going to hear more about the Baker Tilly study. The Parkview Committee has a meeting on Thursday at 3 p.m. at the Coughlin Building. I'd really encourage you to tune in to watch the video on Civic Clerk, or of course attend in person. If you do, one of the things that you're going to hear is that Parkview is actually doing pretty well on its financial statements this year. The county board budgeted a $1.7 million deficit for Parkview in 2024. We're going to find out in our financial report at the meeting on Thursday that currently Parkview is sitting with a deficit of only $322,352. It's running almost $1.5 million ahead of where we budgeted, in large part because of some of the operational changes that have been made to increase staffing, both between the administration at Parkview and the Human Resources Department. We'll also hear in the county executive's budget that Parkview is intending to recover $1.2 million in state aid by realizing costs in the appropriate places. So when you hear later in the budget that we need to cut costs at Parkview, that we need to cut staffing positions at Parkview, I want to tell you that that's not accurate. To get the full picture, please tune in to the meeting on Thursday at 3:30 p.m. at the Coughlin Building. Thank you.
Supervisor Gilbertson.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The UW Extension wanted to extend an invite to all of the board members to their Introduction to Plain Language course. It's on November 7th, either from 1 to 3 p.m. or 6 to 8 p.m. Thank you.
Supervisor Swan.
Let everyone know that UWO Fox City's Campus Board of Trustees will hold a meeting on the 28th, Monday the 28th of this month at 1 p.m. at the campus at 1478 Midway Road in Menasha. Thank you.
Supervisor Powers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a great county tour that we took yesterday, and also thank Critters and Wouldn't I, for a nice tour and great lunch. Thank you.
Supervisor Bender?
I'd just like to say in personnel and finance, I brought up several times, Outagamie County pays almost $1 more an hour for CNAs than we do. So why would, if you lived in Fox Crossings or close to Outagamie County, why wouldn't you go up there and make $1 more an hour? And yet, we don't look at that and raise our wages. You know, we're probably 50 CNAs short, and we run about 65 empty beds at Parkview. You know, if you fill those beds up, you're utilizing them. They have a waiting list of 20-some people, maybe 30, I'm not sure. But it's at least 25 people that are waiting to get in there. I had people call me that in a hospital, they can't get in a nursing home because there's no openings. You know, we need to take care of them people. They basically worked their whole lives and need a place to go. And as Winnebago County, we have to make sure that they have a place to go. You know, we have to basically evaluate their wages for a CNA, and we have to pay a little more if you want to get them. You know, but every time I bring it up, nothing happens. We don't raise the pay. And if I was a CNA, I surely would go work in Outagamie County for $1 more. You know, I mean, if I lived in Fox Crossings, it's about the same distance. So why wouldn't I take an extra $160 a month and work for them?
Okay. Okay. Vice Chairman Fari?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to announce the Ledge Committee is this coming Monday, October 21st at 8:30 a.m. Please attend if you can. Thank you.
Supervisor Hens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to let everybody know real quickly, we have our facilities and property management meeting tomorrow. We'll be going over anything on the budget, and we're also going over the 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan. Just want to get that out there. We meet tomorrow at noon at the facilities building. And also, is this where you want me to talk about the tour? No? Okay, I'll save that for later.
You can now that you've started. Go ahead.
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted me to do it here or later, so. Yes, I just want to thank all of the supervisors for supporting my amendment to the rules. We're sitting down and going through the rules to get a second tour. We had 15 people on it. Unfortunately, one of them right here couldn't make it because of a medical reason, but I'm sure we'll get more as it goes on, but having that later on and also later in the year I heard a lot of good feedback for us having a second tour so more people could get out and see things. Just real briefly, some of the things that we did yesterday as we were driving into Amro, we checked out the Habitat for Humanity project just on the bus as we drove by. We stopped at the Amro Area Community Center where we found out that they're starting to get a lot of their people back because it was a 2-year project that they were basically without a building. And they have all kinds of things there like cooking and physical therapy and veteran services for our county meets there. We went from there to the Walcott Creek Dam, which for those of you who are on the 2022 to 2020, the last county board, you know that we approved a lot of money out there, and they showed us where they're going to be clearing brush for like a new shelter type facility at the beginning. There's lots of ash that has died out there that needs to be cleared up. And they showed us where the parking lot and the paths that need work and the bridges the walkways that need work, and how they're controlling the overflow out there because they have very, very big problems with the overflow and how that's going to be taken care of out there. Then we went to Wood Eyes in Winnebago for our dinner. Then thanks to Supervisor Nelson for setting that up. He gave us a very extensive history of that place, and I'm not going to go into that now because I'm trying to keep this brief. Then we went through, after we were finished there, we went through Lake Winnebago Park to view the upgrades that are going on there. And it's part of the plan where they're going to have seawalls to help save some marsh area that's there, new parking lot, and that's going to give them double the parking. They're straightening out the docks and paving the road and everything through there. They're just going to make it much easier for people to use going through there. And then after we finished with that, we actually took a drive through to view the new fence that was put up by the 980 housing since the last time we were on the tour. And that looks really nice over there. And then we drove past the construction for the morgue and the evidence building, and then we returned home. And as I said, everybody seemed to have a good time yesterday and felt that it was a worthy endeavor. So once again, I thank you all for supporting that amendment.
Thank you, Supervisor Hintz. You did a very good job, even though it was raining a little bit when you were writing and in the dark. It was, and I also want to thank all of you that could go, and some of you I know had to back out the last minute for whatever reason, sicknesses or whatever, but I'm sure we'll probably do another fall one because it was a beautiful time of the year and that, and it was very good. And one thing that wasn't mentioned about Wood Eyes that I think is well worthwhile, if you ever get over there to eat, it's good food, but that was started by the IDB, which the county that's where they got the original money from. That's just a project, but it's just great, and talk to Supervisor Nelson. He can tell you all about it. Supervisor Swan.
My mic is on, I just want to let you know.
Anyone else on the tour? Otherwise, we're going to keep on going from that. Again, thank you. Okay, county executives reports and appointments.
There we go. It's lit. All right, so my county executive report and appointment is 3 parts. So I want to start with comments on some agenda items, and then go to an appointment, and then into introduction of the 2025 budget proposal. So comments on agenda items, I just got 3 I want to touch on real quick. We had some really interesting timing. So tonight you're going to be voting on whether or not to approve funding for a paver. Our paver died today, paving some parking lots at the park. So hopefully that gets approved. I would urge you please approve it. We do have the person selling us a new paver is here tonight. I'm going to sign that. We will have a new one in 1 to 2 days, I was told, if everything goes right tonight. The second thing is we have 2 vehicles for the morgue. This is going to help us when we have the morgue, have vehicles to actually go and do transports ourselves. And I was told by Cheryl just before this meeting that Friday is the deadline for that. So the timing just kind of aligned really well for that. So I urge you all to please pass those 2, if not anything else. The other agenda item report to talk about tonight is the government identified project fund being proposed to close out, and the interest go up into the county fund. And I just want to have a little discussion on that. I'm very proud of the fact that we did this in a very transparent way. I'm very proud of the fact that we shared a significant amount of monies to make our community stronger and our nonprofits stronger. But I also completely support the fact that it's time to look at our own needs and to put that in the county fund. So I would very much support that passing. And then, if you don't mind, we'll go on to appointments.
If there's any questions.
Any questions on agenda items.
Any questions at this time of the agenda items? Just punch right in. I think I can get you now on this here. Supervisor Powers.
I don't know if this is a question for you, or should wait till it comes up on the, to vote and ask Cheryl, but I was wondering why we needed 2 vehicles for the morgue. Why isn't 1 enough?
I would rather have you ask
Sure.
our medical examiner that when the item comes up.
Not seeing any other questions. Move on to your appointments.
All right, after a long period of being the interim, I would like to appoint Miss Jennifer Rutten as our new IT director.
Motion made and seconded. Seconded by Don. Motion by Nate. Don seconded it. Okay, whoever. I just knew the two were. Motion made and seconded for Jennifer Rutten to be Informational Technology Director. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried.
Congratulations.
Introduction of the 2025 budget proposal.
All right, so getting ready to pull up my slides. There are three things I kind of want to talk about. All committees have gotten an overview. If you haven't had a committee meeting yet, you will get that overview at your committee meeting, but I just want to give a general broad intro to this year's budget. We did have some illness hit purchasing in our printing department, so we have all the budget books printed, but they're not bound yet. Reese is going to reach out to everybody individually. We'll make sure we get those to you before Monday. Otherwise, it is posted on our county website. So if you want to get ahead of it and start looking at it on the county website, it is available online. And as soon as we have those, Reese, I'm volunteering you to reach out and make sure that that happens. But we did intend to have it on your desk tonight. So you can go on the next slide. So the three things I really want to cover in this is the guide to the budget document. What does it look like this year? What are the changes in the budget document? And what are some of the key budget assumptions? Go to the next slide. So how it's going to look a little bit different this year. It's still going to have the same introduction and overview. It's going to have a couple other parts to that. So it's going to have a draft of our strategic priorities. Now, this is important. Just say it's a draft. It's something we got to hone in on this year. Also, the PBB narrative and some of the budget levy summaries a little bit more in detail than we've had in the past, and some of the budget and financial policies that it's important for us to understand going forward. The financial structure and summary by division department, you're going to break it down into kind of the roles of county government, and we're going to follow that. It's a little bit more aligned. You're also going to see all the programs laid out for every single department and the cost. If you've been through a committee meeting, you've seen some of the cost, whether it be expenses, and then the revenues if there are. Now, it's important to say, like I've said in committees, that these are not set in stone. This is a great start point. So there's questions you have throughout the year you want to challenge, where we're doing costing or where revenue should be applied. We are open to those discussions. Also, we're putting debt and the capital plan in there. I think that's a part of our budget. It's important that we have kind of everything that deals with number in this planning document. Also, the appendices is going to include table organization this year, as well as some demographic economic statistics for the county. It will include the opioid abatement fund, it will include the neighborhood investment fund, and it will include the spirit fund. I think it's important to have all those. Another thing I want to add in here is, for a long time, solid waste has not been a part of the budget. It's been an appendix of the budget. This year, it's actually in the budget under Public Works, and I feel it's important. The county board is really the ultimate authority of all spending and appropriations in the county, so all those things should come to here as well. And it's more of a statutory correction that we have made. So you're gonna see that, and it also accounts for a good amount of what looks like a spending increase in our budget, but it's just never been appropriated to our budget. So it's more telling the true story. I think the first budget I was here, we added the TO of solid waste, and that was a little confusing at the time, but there are our employees, so we just added to the TO. So it is all included. So this really is going to be a comprehensive budget, document, if you would, a preview. So some of the changes in the budget document, we added the Information Technology Interfund. This was explained a lot at the committee level of why we do it. Some departments we get revenue back and reimbursements back, and it kind of maximizes that. But in order to obtain those, we have to do it through all the departments countywide. For example, child support is a federally mandated program. The feds cover 66% of all costs. Now they are not only paying 66% of the laptop and 66% of the infrastructure, 66% of the help desk and everything else that goes into it, as well as licensing, Microsoft 365 and everything else. So it's a good way for us to kind of recoup some of those costs that we were putting tax levy into, and it frees up that tax levy to go to some of the other needs that we have. We also added a draft of our strategic priorities under the overview section. Of course, that is just a draft. I want to get that in everybody's eyes so we can start thinking about that, going through committees and really getting that public engagement to lock that thing in. We also added, as I mentioned before, the solid waste department under Division of Public Works. So if you see an increase under Public Works, that is why that we've kind of brought that into the full budget picture. We also added the County Board Scholarship to the General Government Division. I think we left that at $9 $2,000 scholarships this year. There was a document, we came up with a document to kind of show you some of the amounts of local grants or scholarships in the area, and we're actually really competitive. We're at the top of that list. We're not going to compete against the national, say, Elks scholarship that gives out $40,000 to $100,000. But on a local level, we're pretty robust, and not only the amount of our scholarship, but having 9 of them is pretty impressive. And then we've also added programs and definitions by department and included the revenue and expense graph in each department. So when you go through the budget book, when you go through the presentation, you will see all the programs that they have, from the most expensive to the least expensive, and then if there's revenue in there, you'll see some of that. Again, not locked in stone. I also want to say the programs themselves aren't locked in stone. If you go through your committees and you decide that 2 programs are really separate, should be broken up, we can do that. If you look at your programs, you discuss them through your committees in the year and say, hey, these are kind of similar, we can combine them. But I think it's a really good first step, and also important to understand that this process is really a 3 to 5 year process. It's going to take us to dial this in, to really define not only what we do, but then define why we do it, and then figure out what our priorities are and where our needs are increasing and where our needs are going away, and start adjusting to that. Some of the key budget assumptions. What's that? That's the Teams meeting. Here, I'll tell you what. You want to pass that back? Here, you got, I'll give you that one. All right, so to account for a low general levy increase, because our net new construction was a little bit below 1.04, it was a little bit just north of $630,000 this year. We asked our departments to limit their budget requests and come in as flat as possible. Now, it's hard to do as flat as possible, considering I'm proposing 2% for the range and 2% for merit. And that's the 4% increase that you see there. As you can see, merit pay moves everybody across the range, and then the range, the schedule adjustment, before nobody would actually move with that. We'd have people moving backwards on the range, so we've kind of corrected that. The total county labor increases for this year is $5.2 million, but a lot of that is reimbursable. We have added a lot. We're proposing a lot of people being added to CLTS this year in Human Services. That is 100% reimbursable from the state. So a lot of those things we get money back for. Obviously, it's not a hit of our levy of $5.2 million. And then we had to assume a 6.52% increase in our insurance premiums. That's based off of where they were last year on a single payer plan that is roughly $8 to $10 a paycheck. So it's not a huge. I don't want you to think that we're giving our employees 4% and then taking 2.5% away from it. It really is. We want to keep it as flat as possible. We haven't raised our insurance costs in the last 3 budgets, and then we saw a little bit of dip, so we want to kind of adjust that, make sure that we're keeping it as flat as long as possible. And then the other thing that I will work for when we have our budget kickoff is I kind of want to show you the history of our budgets, of what we've always adopted. And we've always adopted this big structural deficit. And then we have an audit 3 months after the year is done. And then in September, we find out we actually had a surplus of anywhere from $1 to $6 million. So we're working on a graph to really show you that history of how far off we've been, and we're trying to get closer to true. I think we are still in good shape this year. As you'll hear, hopefully, when we get to bonding, we're in a very, very strong financial position. So there's no need to really panic at this point. We have plenty of time to really let this process, 3 to 5 years, really dial us into what we need to prioritize in the county. So with that, leave that as my last slide. I will take any questions on what the process looks like this year, or any questions on what you should be expecting.
Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. County Executive Damo, you just said some very interesting things, and I've also been picking up on some things brought up over the last several meetings that I'm finding concerning. Notably today, especially what Supervisor Schellinger just said, something Supervisor Binder said. You may recall Chairman Wise of JPS, Chair Powers. You mentioned about the ability and what the county board does. So what I'm actually looking for right now is, as we approach the budget, I need to understand the role that the executive's office sees from the county board chair, the committee chairs, and the board itself, because I'm watching a growing disconnect.
So you want to know the disconnect and some of the, I guess I'm trying to understand the concern real quick.
Well, for example, Chairman Wise wanted an agenda posted. Supervisor Powers wanted an agenda posted. That got stalled at the executive's office. Supervisor Schellinger just mentioned a concern about something that also stalled and didn't happen through the
Sure.
executive's office.
Okay, I think I understand. I can address those. Those are kind of separate instances, not really budget. So the first two, well, and this is not a criticism. Mary Ann was on vacation, so for the JPS meeting, she didn't get to the resolutions, and it needs to get through her approval first. Make sure things are legal, then it gets to me, and then it went through. So that was kind of solved. I think me and Supervisor Wise discussed that, and that was okay. The Parks one was a glitch on Civics Plus, or Civic Clerks. We have now worked through that. I think we have that one figured out. Parkview is a little bit different. The reason the first five were because it was the only first five I wanted given. I disagreed with the second half of the slides. It's based on a Baker Tilly report that's not done yet. It's still in a draft form. So I'm kind of waiting to see where that was going, and I wasn't comfortable at going to the committee with their assumptions because it's not their role, really. And I understand your concerns, I do, but as the chairman of Parkview, it is your job and the committee's job to decipher or decide what the future of Parkview is. And that's what I wanted to do. I want to make sure you're there on the takeoff, not the landing. So none of those decisions have been made. I disagreed with a lot of their assumptions in this slide, which is why I only wanted the first 5 slides, because I thought the rest of it wasn't helpful to us or a direction we wanted to go, and really just wanted to set them up for that. So I wasn't trying to hold things back. Another thing I think was mentioned was facility condition assessment, which is also on our website now. If you go to facilities, everybody has access to the 125-page full document and the 35-page, I think, summary of it. So some of the disconnect is just communication. Some of it was bugs through Civic Plus. But really my intention is to show it as it is, to tell the true story and then give people the chance to adjust. I want to make sure you're getting correct information. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, because You're saying that you want us to have correct information, but then you just admitted, well, you don't really need this part of the information for what Supervisor Schellinger was referencing, a delay in the facility study. How do you expect us as a board to make informed decisions, especially in the next 2 weeks,
Well,
with a delay?
we have to start trusting
information.
each other. That's the point. And I understand that may be hard for some. I'm trying to make sure that you have good information, right? Which is why if I had some disagreements, and I think Lindsay had some disagreements, that I wanted to make sure that we're only putting it to the point where you're getting information so that you can start to make those policy decisions and not have assumptions pushed upon you. That's your role as supervisors. It's your role to guide policy. It's your role to guide budget decisions. And if it wasn't ready for that, I didn't want it to go. That's my role as a county executive. Department heads, everything that comes to you comes through me. So I'm elected to make sure that we're giving accurate information and that it's good policies coming to you, to make sure they're legal, make sure, that's why it has to go through Corporation Council, to make sure that anything that's being proposed is aligned with our code or state statute. It's my job to make sure that I'm guiding you all the best I possibly can so you can make informed and solid policy decisions.
And yet you said you withheld information. Just put the information
did not
out
say
there.
withheld
Just put the-
information.
Okay, you didn't feel some of the information was necessary.
I thought it was garbage information.
So, why are you making that decision on behalf of the board members or committee chairs?
Because I want to let my administrator at Parkview set it up to where she feels comfortable for it. Let her get it to the point where she feels she could succeed, and then when she is ready for that information, go forward. The only reason that I wanted to make sure that Supervisor Schellinger had the copy of the draft report in her notes is as a courtesy to the chairman of Parkview. I wanted to make sure that you saw what was kind of going on in the back scenes as the chairman of that committee, because you have a big role to kind of guide there. It's not ready. That's not a report. That's not a document that's ready for it's still a note, if you would, until it's getting developed. So that's all. I just want to make sure that we have things that are ready to go beforehand. And if you disagree with it, that's fine. I'll try to reflect on that and figure out how to do better in the future.
Someone's ahead of you. Vice Chairman Fari.
On that topic, and I appreciate Supervisor Hanson bringing this up, I've been doing this a long time, folks, so here's how it works. The committee chairman approves the agenda. Usually you work with the director of the department to figure out what's going to be on the agenda. Then that is submitted to the clerk to post publicly at least 7 days prior to the meeting. County Board rules. Exception, if there's a resolution or an ordinance that needs to be reviewed by Corp Council. There is no authority or prerogative for administration to even be looking at that agenda, much less placing their input into the agenda. That needs to stop. You don't have that authority. You don't have that right. You shouldn't be interfering with that process. So I agree with Supervisor Hanson. I object to this, sir. You need to stop that. Period. Just let the Robert's Rules of Order prevail and let us do our jobs. If you got an objection, attend a meeting and raise the objection during public comment.
Okay.
That's your role as an administrator, in my opinion.
Supervisor Holt.
I appreciate where you're coming from, that you didn't want Baker Tilly to overstep in making those assumptions, especially erroneous assumptions that didn't have the input from the committee. I do believe that Vice Chair Fari is correct that you should be letting the process play out. But I also think there was an important role to play in communication of what Baker Tilly was responsible for and who they should be communicating with in regards to assumptions. And so I think that might be part of where it falls down. If Baker Tilly doesn't understand their role, A, they're wasting county money, right, by doing something that they weren't supposed to be doing. But I think in second part, it creates a tension that is probably unintentional and is avoidable. And so I highly recommend making sure that Baker Tilly in the future has really clear marching orders and understands the scope of their work and who to communicate with regarding which components. So that's a very specific issue that I think you have gotten a lot of feedback on and you'll continue to get feedback on.
If I could respond to that real quick, I think that's a very valid point. These are not initiatives that are really coming from supervisors to go on the thing. These are initiatives started by my department heads.
Right.
So I'm working with them. It's not, I just want to make sure they have it right, that they're bringing it forward. And as chairman, if there's anything you want to bring up, you are more free, and I would never get in the way with that. But if it's something that's initiated from my department head, it's my job to oversee them, make sure they're giving you the best information possible, hence agenda item reports, that things are accurate. And I agree with Supervisor Schellinger. I think some of their information was old. And some of their information was wrong. And some of their assumptions were wrong. I don't think it's as dire as a picture that they put.
But to improve transparency, so with all due respect, to improve transparency, you could share that entire report with your input in the report or your administrator's input in the report saying these assumptions are not to be made by Baker Tilly, but rather to be made by the committee. And, you know, put that as a caveat in that presentation so that you're not affecting the relationship and the trust that you're trying to build with each of these committee members. So that's my first piece of feedback. But regarding the budget, I have a lot of feedback on budgets. I have a strategic background, as I've mentioned before, and I know this is the first time we're trying to do priority-based budgeting, and I would ask that we all just know our role in giving you feedback. And to that end, I want to know when you want the feedback and at what level you want the feedback from us so that we don't delve deeper than we need to in giving you some direct feedback that may be overstepping our responsibilities, but also so that we know the right timing to give you the feedback. So maybe it's not to give you feedback on specific line items right now. Maybe it's to give you feedback on do you have the priorities right? I don't know what you expect of us in the timing because I'm new to this, but I think we would, since we had, you know, a third turnover, it might be beneficial for one of you to help us understand our role and at what point you want that input and specifically which input when.
I appreciate that. I think, you know, feedback is questions on maybe some of the TO changes or things that are being asked for. I think on the floor of the board during that is fine to ask of department heads. If you have something ahead of time that you want to reach out to either department head or myself, I'd be glad to sit down and talk with that. As far as strategic plan, I think we have time. That's something we should develop over the next year. I think as far as programs go, that is something we should look at over the next 3 years. As far as allocation goes, that's something we could definitely talk over the next year. As far as positions or maybe fund use, if you have questions on that, that's something we absolutely can address this year. You can address whenever you want. I give you a proposal and then it's yours.
Okay.
So after that, it's up to you. If you have, if your committees have talked about amendments or have something else, feel free to bring that up. Some of them already came up. I'm already working on some of them. I know the Sheriff's Department discussed a TO change from sergeant to lieutenant. Hopefully I got that the right way. We're already working on, you know, how we can get that done. I think that's an easy one. So yeah, there's no real bad time.
Okay.
That's kind of been the history of Winnebago budget and why it's 3 to 4 days long.
Okay.
Right.
So then my last one continues to be about that transparency and making sure we're building trusting relationships. I believe at one of the meetings, I can't even remember which one, because honestly, I think I was in some discomfort at the meeting that I heard this. And so my question is regarding those multi-year investment plans or program plans. Do you share with us at some point those plans? I remember hearing somewhere, maybe it was last month even, that we were not at liberty to receive some of the multi-year investment plans for specific administrative functions. Tom, you and I messaged about it briefly. So I've got the date of when it was happening. But my question really is around building trust and making sure that when we have multi-year assumptions about when we're going to make specific investments. So I'll give you the example of the paver. If the paver happens to be something that we were budgeting for next year, but we moved it up a year, I'd like to see those multi-year plans so that I know what's moving where and from a timing standpoint. And so I heard that we are not at liberty to see that, and I was pretty offended by that as a board member, that is somebody's working document. And so I'm just being transparent with you to build trust with you that I'm uncomfortable with that.
The CIP is always available, and a little bit of history in that we've never really had a CIP that we followed. I think my first year I was here, projects came to the board individually throughout the year. We didn't look at a full plan. To last year was the first year, Paul really wanted to get this done to adopt one CIP so we can understand a plan and then go for bonding at the end of the year. And this is the first year we're actually moving it into, so you could see it as a document part of the budget proposal. And not only should we have a plan, we should stick to the plan. The paver is something that wasn't in there, but it was a need. It's another reason why we went Spirit Fund on that, because it wasn't in the capital improvement plan. But I agree. I mean, these are things that I think frustrated me, and it's taken me almost budget 4 to get this stuff
visible.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
If there's ever a report, I don't think there's any issue with Paul. Paul's obviously never been given direction from me not to hold any reports back.
Okay, I will share with you the details
Okay.
post-meeting because I don't want to call anybody out individually right now.
Sure.
I will share those details post-meeting. I want to make sure that I'm on the record saying I am uncomfortable if somebody says that's my working document and therefore the county board can't see it, even if it's an assumption that's built into that budget. I feel strongly that the county board should be able to review, even if we don't want to, that's our prerogative, right? We should be able to review multi-year intentional plans that input into the budget. And so I just want to make sure I'm on the record.
Okay.
Before I call on the next supervisor, I just want to tell all of you that this will be the ones that are your first coming up, that if you want to talk like to county executive or any of the departments, you should talk to him before, because he will come in that evening, he'll start his budget session, and then it's ours, whether to go along with it or rip it apart.
Yep.
He won't be able to be coming back and forth all the time.
Good,
We've
okay.
had that issue before, so. if you
I
wanna
get to
talk
go home
him,
after day 1.
If you want to talk to him ahead of time or whatever, or, because otherwise you'll have to talk to him while the meeting's not going on. Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While I'm asking my question, maybe Dia or Jennifer could come up and find my voting button again and speaking button. Since you talked about a couple of months into following the budget, you can, there's more than $1 million, $1.5 million that comes in that we're not expecting. Going back to what Supervisor Binder had said, is there any way we can increase the needs at Parkview so we could actually get it filled? There's no reason to have 2 or 3 neighborhoods empty because of staffing. There's no reason why we have to pay our CNAs $1 an hour less than what Outagamies doing. We have a vibrant nursing home there and rehab, and we need to support that. I have heard from constituents as well that there's a waiting list, and they're worried about that. Also, there's some concern that I keep hearing. They're hearing rumors that that there's a buyer out there that's been lurking around for a while. The county executive knows about it. You got bad press out here, sir. He's got somebody waiting in the wings to buy up our county facility. And I'll tell you right now, I don't think you're going to have support from the county board to sell the Parkview. And we could open those other neighborhoods that are closed, get rid of that waiting list if we were paying our nurses the right amount of money. Something that's fair, something that's more in line with what other counties around us are doing.
All right, let me adjust a couple. You had a couple questions there. First of all, I think it's more than $1 or $1.5 million off. If we're budgeting a structural deficit of $6 million and we have a $2 million surplus, that's $8 million off. So we have to get closer, and that's what I walked into. I mean, everything, and Vice Chairman Faria, I completely respect what you're saying, but the one thing that we have always done is just the Winnebago way. It hasn't always followed the statute, and I try my best. I swore an oath to follow statute, and that's what I'm trying to do. And if there's a disagreement, we'll absolutely have that, and if you're right, we'll absolutely follow that. It is not meant to be disrespected, and I appreciate your comments. I just wanted to make sure I said that. Second, it is not my policy decision to sell or do whatever with Parkview, and I intend to keep it for a long time. My mom is now on, she is a widow that is on a very limited income, and she's paid taxes as a teacher in this county her entire life. I expect that to be there for her when she needs it. When I first got in office, I went to the Parkview Committee for a policy decision. When people call me to buy Parkview, do I say entertain it or can I say no? I needed policy authority of the Parkview Committee to tell me that I could say no, and the answer was no. And I have said no to everybody who has called, including today. I had a call of somebody who wanted to buy Parkview. So they're out there. I'm not interested. Like, we have to make sure that it's there. People in this county have paid taxes to keep that thing going and build it for a long time. And by the time that they need it, because they're aging and our aging population is not great here as far as financially sound Winnebago County, that is the population we have, it needs to be there for them when they need it. So that is my intention. I look forward to working with the Parkview Committee to make sure that it is sound and that we do put it on good, solid land so that it can be viable well in the future.
I appreciate that money gets a surplus. I'm thinking especially of Human Services, since I've served on there for a long time, and money comes in, 2 years after something has been actually performed for some people, and it gets plowed into the general fund. If we're sitting on a large amount of the general fund, I think we should look at this carefully and make some decisions about Parkview and make it the vibrant and healthy facility that it certainly could be. Several years ago, I had said, is there possible to do something else with those neighborhoods that's not for the nursing home? And I was told that the only way you could do that is if you built a firewall. You'd have to completely restructure that thing. You can't use it for something else. We have to use it for the nursing home. Please, can't we put some more money into nurses' salaries and get quality nurses, get those neighborhoods filled up, hire more people? I think we could do it. We've got the money for it.
We have to evaluate it first, but I'm not against that.
Well, I don't know what you mean by evaluate. We've got a waiting list of people who want to move in there.
Well, here's a
and
reason
beds
for
are
you.
empty.
If you are losing money on private pay, right? If that is true, and that is the assumption right now, if we're subsidizing private pay, which is supposed to be what's making it break even or then some, so we can keep it there for the Medicaid and Medicare beds, you don't want those neighborhoods open, right? You better make sure that your private pay is actually carrying its weight and covering those Medicaid, Medicare beds. Otherwise, it's probably a good thing that they're not. So let's evaluate, make sure it's right, and then do our best to recruit. And if that's another $1, $2 an hour, go for it. Like, whatever we can to get those beds filled and get staff in there to make sure that the facility needs to be. And again, the scary thing is if we decide to take some of those skilled nursing beds away, we probably will not get them back. That is my assumption. People think that the feds someday will say, hey, we're going to give you these beds back. I don't think that's true. I think once they're gone, they're gone. So we have to tread carefully. We have to make sure that it makes sense. When I first got elected, we did a lot of pay adjustments for emergency pay over the weekends, and some of that had compressions, and we had to come with another adjustment to fix those compressions. That had compressions, and then we had to come with another adjustment to make sure that's right. I don't want to get into that. I want to make sure that we have a sound plan going forward, and kind of look at it. And when we go through this process in 3 years, maybe we find some programs that it's not our role, and we can start reallocating some of those money. I'm okay losing $1 million a year at Parkview to make sure that it's there for the people, the taxpayers that have paid their entire life to make sure it's there when they need it.
Well, the
That's
private
what this
pay,
process is about.
the private pay, the way the healthcare,
Chairman, point of order. This is getting into being a committee, a committee tussle with the executive. There's no point in that.
I appreciate that.
Let's move that off to something else, get the committees involved, and then go on. But we don't need to go down 5 rabbit holes in order to get our executive off the mic.
And I don't take things personally. If you want to come have a conversation with me, I'll do my best to give you the best information I can. I mean, this is why we exist, to have these conversations. Comfortable, uncomfortable, that's what this is about.
Supervisor Cox, are you passing?
The only thing I want to go back to, Mr. Executive, is Charles Farry's comment that everything is being delayed, or it's sent out or brought out a day before it has to be discussed. And then we end up having problems. Or we have you involved in setting agendas. And those agendas aren't right, so they have to be pulled. We're having difficulty getting the lanes right for who the executive deals with and who the board deals with and who the chairman deal with, okay?
Yep.
If we can finally figure out who gets the keys to the completion file and who gets to get that thing open in the clerk's office, so we don't have delays in getting the agendas out when they're supposed to be, okay?
Yep. The department heads report to me, so if they don't have an agenda item report done, they're not going forward because they have to get their
And
homework
it
done.
goes to the next month.
Correct. 100%. I agree with you on that.
All right.
Supervisor Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Executive Damo, you mentioned policy quite often tonight.
Yep.
That the board sets policy. The board does not set policy, you set policy. You've told me that on numerous occasions whenever I tried to delve into the policy realm, that it's you who set policy and that I'm treading on your your turf whenever I'm talking policy. We review policy, we comment on it, and we approve the dollars, but you set the policy, we don't.
I've challenged you to go back and find when I've said that. That is your job, policy and budget, is my job, operations administration. That is what I've always said.
That's not true, but
Okay. Look, we
I'm just-
had a hard time following the statute. When I got here, a lot of things that we've done that were outside of line. And I've been trying to do my best to make sure that my oath is fulfilled, that we're following state statute. We never reappointed our highway commissioner. Bob, we're finally doing that legally. Congratulations. And if you want to be mad at me because I'm trying to follow the law of what I swore to do, then that's fine. But getting personal does nothing good for the people that are struggling out there.
It's not personal. I'm just stating a fact here that, needs to be brought out.
I don't drive policy. You drive policy. You all drive policy. I drive administration's operations. I make sure that we are following the policy that you set forward.
Well, that's just not what you told me in chambers, let's just say, but anyway. I'd like to move on. I just want to ask one other thing, point one other thing out, and that has to do with, I agree wholeheartedly with Supervisor Holt and what she said about transparency. If that Baker Tilly report is a draft, that's news to me. I mean, in your mind, it may be a draft, but not in Baker Tilly's, I don't think. Unless you didn't like what you saw and you didn't want the public to see it. That's the other thing. With these reports that the taxpayers pay for, they have a right to see every one of them. They have a right to see every one. I'm glad to see that you're going to allow that the facility study be looked at now.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, so can I ask Supervisor Schellinger, does it have the word draft on it? Because I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to wait until Lindsay shows it to me. Yes? All right, thank you.
Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we heard a lot of really interesting things from Vice Chair Fari and Supervisor Cox and Supervisor Hanson. And I may have my own opinion, but I'm actually quite interested in the opinion of our chair, right? The person that we look to lead and kind of bring this body forward. Because we could all say our own opinions, but we need someone to help codify it, or is this going to sit here and kind of dangle a little bit and we're not going to really make any progress? So I would be very interested to hear what your thoughts are in terms of the roles and responsibility of the county board and the county board supervisors, and the role of the chair of the committees relative to the agenda and the meeting itself.
I'll be more than happy to answer that, and no offense, but it always has been, it could be changed, but the committee chairs wrote out their agendas and went from there, and that was the agenda. It went to the Corporation Council to look at, to make sure all the writing was correct on it, but it never had to go, as I say, the fourth floor. They never went up there to look at them. But now they've done things different up there, and they have different ones look at it up there, and if they're people which they're in charge, they're department heads, you got to remember the department heads, he has the rights over, he can hire and fire them, and if it isn't that way, things can change there. My feeling is, though, the committee chairs have always been the one in charge of the agendas. And I think you know that from when you were the chairman, that committee chair was very strong on that.
Oh, absolutely, and that's in part why I'm asking the question.
Yes.
I know the answer,
Yes.
right? But I think it's important that we codify this a little bit, and there has to be some remedy then. Someone has to do something, or we're going to sit here and just kind of talk again and again and again. I don't know what that is, but we have to come up with something, or we're going to sit here for the next year and a half of this term and have the same conversation.
Yeah.
Correct.
And thank you.
I'm giving everyone kind of more leeway than their 2 minutes before anybody says anything tonight, but I wanted to just get this out because I've heard it from all sides, and I thought, let's lay it on the table.
And if I could, I think that's a good point. I think sometimes, and this is new for department heads too. I mean, you have to remember 3 years ago, we didn't have agenda item reports, we didn't have draft resolutions. So sometimes they'll give us the information, we'll get the agenda item reports, so sometimes Corporation Council will get the resolutions 3-4 hours before the agenda packet has to be posted, right? So we're not always getting the information, and I just want to make sure the information's correct, make sure all the checks or balances. Sometimes it has to go through Mary Ann, it has to come through us, and then, we post back sometimes of the questions to the department heads. If you don't have a background, why don't you have a background? If you don't have a fiscal impact, why don't you have a fiscal impact? Is it right? So sometimes I think that process could be a little bit more ahead of time. In your opinion, and I like the idea that if it's not there, postpone it to the next meeting. That gives us time, then we don't have to hold things up. But I think it's important, if you want these on your agenda, that we get the documentation right to get it on the agenda. Not just for you as the chairman or the committee, but the general public should have a right to know what's coming down the pipeline.
But I do think, I'm going to say, John, I'm going to call you John now, I do think that the fourth floor can get some of this stuff out ahead of time. I think sometimes it gets lagged behind or say I didn't have time, or not just you, that's why I say the fourth floor,
Well,
who's ever in charge of it up there.
Yep.
Not up there, but in that category.
Sure.
That I was too busy, I couldn't get it out, and so we couldn't do this and that and the other thing. I think some of this could be looked at ahead and maybe be prioritized.
Sure.
Supervisor Halber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually had a really detailed question about budget stuff. So I hear often and a lot recently that we lack staff at Parkview and stuff. Is there any way to give a detailed budget and proposal budget for this year of what the advertisement and hiring looks like for those open positions? I know a lot of times we need to refocus where we're advertising those positions, because in all honesty, I've been a CNA for 15 years and I didn't even know that's how much we were paying or that's how many positions we had open.
Right.
And I've never heard any advertisements on any of the medium that I consume as to those positions being open.
It's actually something you actually see through priority-based budgeting this year. So we're actually proposing the budget a position in IT. How does that help Parkview, you might ask? Well, what it's going to do, it's going to free up somebody, and Jennifer, I have to look at you, the actual name of it, but somebody to understand the technology behind it. Right now, Peg is over, she's in HR, she's in charge of recruiting and all kinds of things at Parkview. You can assume she has her hands full over there. She doesn't have time for recruiting because she's spending so much time supporting, is it Kronos over there? What is it? UKG, so the software that kind of does the coding and all these other things. So the position we're actually doing in IT is to kind of support some of those programs out there to free up capacity for people to do their jobs, for PEG to get out and recruit, for us to post more, for us to finally get, is Mark here, to finally get on online applications, which we are heading for real quickly. That has been a 3-year struggle of mine. But you're right, we have to go recruit. One thing I can see from HR is we actually hit, I want to say 18 job fairs this year. We used to only hit 4 a year, if that. So we're getting out there. We have a long way to go as far as actually recruiting for people. But no, I agree with you, and that's kind of what we have to figure out.
Sure, I guess, but my question is more specifically, can we see where those advertising dollars are going and where that recruiting money is coming from, or how much more we can, vote on upping it? Because I don't think people younger than me, even myself, we don't go to career fairs anymore.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. It's very helpful for our CNA training program for high school students to come in. But you're right, but that would be a policy discussion to come to P&F because recruitment is one of those programs under HR. So when that is being discussed, I would encourage you to reach out or follow P&F and attend those discussions. Look at that program. How do we do it? We'll take your feedback, figure out some ways to dial it in.
Sure.
So great question. Thank you.
Supervisor Swan, this is your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just follow up on the idea of this draft report at Parkview. It may very well have said draft. I did not get to the last meeting because there was another event that I had during the day that took me away from the meeting. I did try to log in. I wasn't able to do it online for whatever reason, but I did try to log in. Don't you think that if we have a draft report, we need to, as a board, set policy, as you say, that maybe, whether it's us or you setting policy, that we shouldn't have a presentation on a draft report, and for certain we shouldn't have it presented piecemeal, because that's just confusing to the public. So, going forward, I would suggest that we wait until that's a finalized report before we give a presentation on it, or we call it a draft, we throw it out there, and we let people look at that too. Maybe we can do both. But the thing is, we have to just define it and decide whether we want to release a draft or not. But not halfway, where you're keeping half of it back, because that just smacks of censorship, and it provides a level of distrust in the public's eye, I think. And that's all I have to say on
No,
that.
and I appreciate that. One of the
Okay.
things that we found, it looks like we evaluated, private pay is being subsidized by roughly $118 a day. County code requires us to cover our costs. So I think Lindsay really wanted to get ahead of that and address that conversation. That's why she wanted to get ahead of that. And I think she was gonna bring it up. I don't know where that's at. I don't know if she's gonna start addressing that. I don't know if you're ready for that as a chairman, but that'll be up to Colby if that discussion moves forward. But she was in a hurry to kind of get ahead of some of that. She didn't want to do it all at once. She wanted to slide scale it. I don't know. But that was, maybe I should have told her, nope, let's not do this. It's not ready to go.
Okay,
So I'll own that.
I'm glad to hear you take responsibility. I think Lindsay does an awesome job,
Yeah.
in her position. I'm not criticizing her whatsoever, but, we just need to get on the same page in terms of what we're presenting to the public.
I agree.
Okay, thanks.
There's no one on Zoom, and I think we had a very vivid, violent, whatever,
Am I good?
conversation tonight, so hopefully, I would like to have Corporation Counsel come up and just say a few words, very few words.
I just wanted to talk or touch briefly on roles and responsibilities, because obviously there's a lot of agita about it, and so I always look at the statute. And I know many of you have asked me, and I said, John, the county executive is in charge of operations. But I think the words of the statute speak volumes. So if you go to WISStat 5917, it says the county executive shall be the chief executive officer of the county. And then it goes on, the duties and powers of the county executive shall be without limitation, because of enumeration, to A, coordinate and direct all administrative and management functions of the county government not otherwise vested by law in other elected officials. Who do we have as elected officials? We have Julie Bartles. We have the sheriff. We have the treasurer. Who else am I? The Register of Deeds, the court, yeah, okay. But if you continue in that statute, it states, in any county with a population of 750,000, again, this county executive, and that's us because we're under 750, shall appoint and supervise the heads of all county departments except those elected by the people, and except where the statutes provide that the appointment shall be made by other elected officers. And then it goes on to say, notwithstanding any statutory provision that a board or commission supervise the administration of a department, the department head shall supervise the administration of the department, and the board shall perform any advisory or policy-making function authorized by statute. So perhaps, basically what happens is, as the county executive said, all of the department heads report to the county executive. The county executive is the department head's boss. And as I've also reminded the county executive, I am the only department head where the county executive is my boss. However, it is if the county executive wanted to terminate me, fire me, he would have to get the approval of the county board. I am the only department head that has that privilege because it's referenced in statute. So perhaps what I believe the county executive is saying is that since the department heads, since he is the boss of all of the department heads go to him and say, okay, this is what we want to present, and he looks at it and says, this looks good. There is no question that once an agenda item report, a resolution, an ordinance goes to a committee, the chair controls the agenda. If you don't want something on the agenda as a chair, you don't have to put it on. The only way, so let's say the way around that is, let's say a supervisor goes to one of your fellow supervisors who's a chair and says, hey, I want this on the upcoming agenda. If you as chair think, no, it's premature, no, we've got too much, the way around it would be if the supervisor, as you know, pursuant to your rules, comes right to county board. Basically, what people have found is that it really makes a lot of sense to bring it forward to a committee, because then people will have an idea as to what is involved. Basically, that's why you go to committee, because you're not going to have the first reading at the full board. We can certainly get into more details, but I wanted to quote the statute so that as opposed to you hearing, well, the county executive is in charge of operations and the board is in charge of policy. Basically, the county executive implements the values or the mission or vision adopted by the county board. So that's basically what I just wanted to add. I hope I didn't add any confusion. Maybe we should have something more detailed, but I just wanted to reference the statute so that you could see where perhaps the county executive is talking and where I have advised other supervisors when they have approached me. 5917.
Thank you. All right, Chairman's report. I can promise you if you don't ask questions, it won't be anywhere as long. This evening, the only ones that has asked to be excused or notified me is Supervisor Wise, Bureau, and O'Brien. The other thing I have is County Mutual Insurance, Wisconsin appointments. I will not be appointing anyone. If you look in your packet, all the papers that were on your, there's a place on there. And if you'd like to go on one of them, go ahead, fill it out, and get it into the clerk's office, and she'll get a hold of me, and I will get it signed, and I'll get it sent in right away. So, and they will do their, go from there. So if you're interested in it whatsoever, David Albrecht was the, for years he was here, so anyone that's interested, it's wide open, and it'd be great if somebody would take over for Winnebago County. So that's all I really have, because we talked about the tours, so next is the consent agenda. Not seeing. Motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay. Business items. First one, authorization of $125,405 from the Spirit Fund for the purchase of 2 vehicles and installation of necessary equipment for the morgue. Vice Chairman Fari.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of Resolution 042-10-2024.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor signify. Oops, I'm sorry.
Speak, I'm sorry. I'm a little discombobulated today.
Yes.
Okay, good. I thought, is this where we're asking why we need 2 vehicles instead of 1?
Yep. Karen is up here, so Karen had pushed her light in just when I shoot. So she's up. Do you want to go up and tell them the reason why?
Hello, everybody. The reason that I'm asking for 2
Want to get
vehicles.
close to the mic, please?
Oh, I knew you were going to say
I
that.
won't bite you.
The reason that, that I'm requesting 2 vehicles instead of 1 is I'm trying to make our office more self-sufficient. So if we only have 1 vehicle and we have 1 person transporting decedents to autopsy, then we have no vehicle to respond to scenes with. So this way, we have more than 1 vehicle, and we're not relying then on a third-party transportation service.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cheryl, I was wondering, if there was a fatality where an entire family was in a wreck, you'd have 5 bodies, say.
Yes.
you still don't have enough vehicles. I don't understand, if you're transporting somebody, you can't guarantee that you're going to have more than one death at a time.
Right.
I'm just wondering about how many vehicles do you have now?
Right now, we have 2 vehicles. One is a Ford Explorer, which will be able to outfit for one. We already have all of that equipment purchased in 2023. And then we have an Escape that will be going to, I believe it's going to be the Health Department. They're looking for another vehicle, so that Escape that can't be used for transporting will be given to that department.
Okay.
And we have had scenarios where we would need more than 2 vehicles. 2 weeks ago, there were 3 of us that were out in the field, all on separate cases.
And how long do your vehicles, how long do you use your vehicles? How long are they in service?
We just got our first one, I think it was 2021 and 22. So I mean, we haven't had our vehicles long enough to say that they need to.
You had no vehicles before 21?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I believe.
All right, then have your 2 vehicles.
Any other discussion I'm missing out on? Halber, Supervisor Halber?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just was wondering, how many staff go out on calls at any given time?
Generally, you have one person that's on call for the county. We have one person that it backs up, which is usually me as a backup. And as the calls, not to sound morbid, if they start stacking up, we obviously don't want families waiting. So we have had scenarios where we have had all 4 of our staff members out on calls at the same time. 2 weeks ago, there was 3 of us.
Okay, I'm in favor of you getting 2 vehicles. Thank you.
Supervisor Hancock? Cool.
Your topic, but I wonder if the county is currently evaluating more like electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles versus simply gas vehicles at this time, or are we still weighing against the paybacks and all that kind of stuff? Because the IRA does have significant funds in it for us to be purchasing electric vehicles, and I didn't know if those are being considered.
I was given a website that I could go to on which vans we would be able to pick from. I did not see any on there that were electric vehicles. One of the things that we do want, though, is we want those vans to have 4-wheel drive. This is Wisconsin, so, and we want to be able to we get called out in the worst conditions, so we want to be able to actually get to those calls, so.
Thank you.
Supervisor Nelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of refresh my memory. I believe when we made the pitch for the morgue and the vehicles that there would be significant cost savings versus having to transport to Fond du Lac, I believe was where you were headed, and
Yes.
having the vehicles in the long run hopefully makes your job a little bit easier and does have significant savings in the process. Am I accurate in that?
Absolutely. This year, I have 66,000 budgeted for transportation, and I believe, once again, that's going to be the one category that I'm going to go over. So if we're doing those transports ourselves, that's keeping, a lot more money in-house. Our goal is to get as self-sufficient as we can, and hopefully someday be off the levy. But I mean, this is definitely a start. So.
Thank you.
Supervisor Gabbard?
I wanted to talk twice before, but I didn't get called on. So I just wanted to ask you a simple question. We were paying a company to come and pick up and take to Fond du Lac, right?
Yes.
Was that about $350 round trip that we were paying?
So
maybe a year ago, a year and a half ago?
Right. No, it's usually from the scene. Oh, goodness. It changed because of not being able to go straight to Fond du Lac with them.
Okay.
So when they do the initial removal, it is $225. The body goes to the facility, and we're charged a daily fee for storage, and then it's an additional $225 to take them down to Fond du Lac. Because it's so close, the funeral homes, when the autopsies are completed, then the funeral homes come and pick up the bodies.
So there's where we're gonna, this is terrible to say, but there's where we're gonna save some money.
Yes, that, and when Fond du Lac is unavailable to do our autopsies, it's kind of the same situation, other than the body is taken down to Walworth County at $350 and then brought back at an additional cost of
I just wanted
$350.
clarification, but that's what I thought.
Yeah.
We should end up being cost effective with 2 vehicles.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I believe the vans will pay themselves off very quickly.
Thank you.
Supervisor Ponzer.
Yes, my question is, when we approved the money for the morgue,
Yes.
to expand that, the reason we were hauling the deceased to Fond du Lac is because we didn't have the room,
Right.
correct?
Right.
Okay, so now we have our own transportation, I'll leave it at that.
Yes.
So we have our own transportation, so we're not spending the money, putting them down in Fond du Lac, so we've covered that cost.
Yes.
And you know more about your department than I do, but I only have one question. The vans or whatever you use,
Mhm.
can you put more than one body in it?
Yes, the vans
Okay.
will be able to do 2.
Okay. The other thing is, maybe I heard you wrong, but they were from 2021?
No, 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 no. The vans we're getting are 2024 vans. So they're
Right.
going to be hopefully ordered tomorrow if approved. The vehicles that we have now are an Escape from 2021 and an Explorer from 22.
And those vehicles will work just fine, correct?
The Explorer will. That'll be just fine. We'll be able to put at least one body in that and still have room for all of our supplies. The Escape right now carries just supplies, and that will go to another department, depending on which one is. I believe it's going to be the health department, but I don't have that say.
But the vehicles you're buying, or we're buying,
Yes.
are specially equipped for the purpose of hauling deceased.
Yes.
So you're working with vehicles that are really not what you need.
Right now, yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know, because I thought, a 3-year-old vehicle and we're buying some more, that's good enough, thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor Albert.
Yes, I believe the cover story on this month's Wisconsin Counties magazine, entitled "The Last Responders," all right, talks about the essential role of this service. And speak to us about what they said in this article about the growing, aging population.
I guess I don't know exactly which part of, they talked about a couple
The
different.
state population is growing older.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
And as a result, those
We're
services you
we're getting
provide
busier, absolutely.
are increasing.
Yes.
That's very simple,
Yes,
right? And therefore, a need for a second vehicle.
yes.
So that's the point I wish to make. Thank you.
Anyone else that I missed? Not hearing or seeing anyone. All those in favor? Whoops. I missed your button. Supervisor Hallberg.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify, we're buying 2 new vehicles and then retrofitting the current vehicles, so then we'll have 3 total.
Yes. The-
Wonderful.
The Explorer, we already have.
Right.
I don't know what it's called or whatever, like rack that goes in there, or where you slide the cot into.
Yeah, you said
So-
you had purchased the equipment needed to make that vehicle work.
Yes, that we did in '23 in hopes that once, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Just, yeah, so again, we will have 3 vehicles if this goes through.
yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, I see no one else. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Carried.
Thank you.
authorization of $700,000 from the Spirit Fund for the purchase of a road paver. Supervisor Buck.
Loud. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of resolution number 04310, 2024.
Second, Powers.
Don't see any speakers. I don't see a pushed in here. Okay, you got them? Okay. Supervisor Swan? I don't have them.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question on this. The road paver that ceased to operate today, I guess it was. Can we retrofit that, or is it junk?
I am going to call, push Supervisor Bender. I think Supervisor Bender's right beside you. He can probably answer as well as any. Supervisor Bender? You can probably answer as well as anyone.
It probably only had a value of about $20,000 to $25,000, depending on what went wrong with it. It probably cost more to fix. I mean, you'll get something for it, but it's not. When it was running, it was only had a value of $20,000 to $25,000. So now that it's not running, it maybe have a value of for parts, or depending on what went out of it. It basically, they just stuck over $100,000 in it last year, and it's not dependable. I mean, you can't go out there with a crew of 16 men, and every hour that paver's down, you lose 16 hours. Like today, that paver was down. If it was down 3 hours before they got the rental paver there, they lost 48 hours of downtime. It's the heart of the operation. When that paver goes down, the whole crew is down.
Bob, would you like to come up and say a few words on the paver?
Quickly?
Supervisor.
Just, I mean, the only reason I'm asking that is because we just talked about having 3 vehicles and having backup vehicles. Can this thing be retrofitted so you have a backup in case even the new one went down, and you'd have a second chips or a second paver that you could bring out in an emergency? That's why I'm asking, that's all, and how much it would cost to retrofit it.
So this paver we have is basically, it's obsolete. We can't find parts. Right now we've got there's major electrical issues. That main controller that runs it, I mean, you'll pave, it just shuts down. You got to shut the machine off for 15, 20 minutes. It starts. It's just a continue. Today, it was just ironic. Today, we're coming to board for this piece of equipment, and ours goes down. It sounds
like you wouldn't need a second one, that this is too much of a headache to bother with, and you just want to get rid of it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Not seeing any other Did you all punch in? You can't. I didn't get anybody punched in. Have you got them, Julie? Anyone punch? We're not getting anybody punched in, so. Supervisor Ricken? Right here in front.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For clarification, it's Ranke, just for future reference, but no worries there. My question, I guess, is if this is such a critical piece of our highway operations, why are we using Spirit funds instead of making this a purchase out of operational budgets?
Just because the cost of this piece of machinery is so large, this would take, I mean, when we replace a piece of equipment like this is usually 10 years. On average, we try to replace this piece just because of the value. To replace a piece of equipment like this, I mean, we've had issues getting plow trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to choose between, do we want plow trucks or this piece of machinery? One thing is with this piece of machinery, we obviously is a big addition to our infrastructure for building. We also do work for the local municipalities, townships.
Sure.
So this is a piece of equipment that we use in the county.
Yeah.
With that.
I'm not questioning the need to update the piece of equipment. I guess my question is, knowing that it was a 2013 vehicle, knowing that it was reaching the end of its life cycle, knowing that it had died in 2023, and it led to significant operational problems, why didn't we start the process then to budget or allocate funds instead of dipping into?
We needed plow trucks.
Okay.
Plain and simple. When I took over, we have an aging fleet. You can come out and look at our vehicles. We've got major deficiencies with our vehicles. Because we couldn't get vehicles, we've ordered vehicles 4 years ago, we still don't have them. We're just starting to get vehicles now. That's the main issue. It was a choice to take plow trucks or this piece of equipment, and it was a choice. We needed the plow trucks.
Is that because of a shortage in your budgeting, or is that because of just a lack of available equipment?
Just availability.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Cox, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. You're up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bob, question on the size of the...
Can you get close to the mic, please, Supervisor Cox?
I have a question on the size of the equipment, both on this and on the chip spreader. You can buy a large one or a small one and spend the same amount of money. Which ones are you going after?
So basically, these pieces of equipment goes by the screed size. We need, because of our size of our roads that we work on, we need the width. So the 10-foot screed is the main part. The tractor part of it, is the screed's the main part that we need for that width. If we go to a 8-foot screed, we have to have extensions to get that wider road. But the 10-foot screed is the major part that we need, just for the widths that we pave on our roadways.
So you're getting the
Correct.
the largest one you can make for the price that you're paying?
Essentially, yes, sir.
Are you going to the chip spreader, and that's the next thing that's on the list?
Yep.
Are you going for the largest one or the smallest one for the
So the same,
550?
scenario is the roadway widths that we pave, that chip spreader has extensions that when this operation goes out, it's out exceeding like a 20-foot wide.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking. We need that one width coverage when we do the chip sealing. And essentially, yes, it's the biggest machine they make.
It expands,
Correct.
right? So you can get the biggest one and...
Yep, if we're doing a 24-foot road, we can extend the full 24 feet. The distributor will spray the oil out, and we can apply that stone over that entire 24 feet. It's a one-shot operation.
All right, I'm going to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Bender? Supervisor Bender?
I'll just say, when you go wider, it cuts the time in half. Like that chip spreader, you can do, most town roads are about 22 to 24 feet. So you do them in one pass. They get the oil by the semi-load. The semi has 24-foot spray bars. So it would be senseless to bring a spray truck down with 24-foot spray bars and have a 12-foot chip spreader. So, the 24-foot is ideal for the chip spreader. And if we don't have those pieces of equipment, we need all these men to plow snow in the winter. We have to have work for them in summer. So if we eliminate the jobs for these chip spreader and the paver, what would we do with the personnel? So it's just essential to keep the paving going and the chip spreader. Like today, they were in the parks. They had 3 parking lots. They got one, and the paver went down. Those lots probably would have been done today. But you can't have if you have a car that's got 250,000 miles, you're not going to want to drive to California. You want something that's reliable, and they need equipment that's reliable. And inflation has skyrocketed. You used to be able to get a quad axle or for about 240,000. I think now they're about 460. So the money that they took in didn't keep up with the inflation. So if we don't have the funds to replace these, they won't have the money. So it's essential that we take the money from the Spirit Fund, approve this. They have a chip spreader or a paver that they could probably get in a week, and they'll be back in business and will be good for another 11 years.
Mr. Chair, can I say, just add on to that? We've got both of these, the chip spreader and the paver, voted 10-0 from ARPA. So they've looked at it, and they want you to have it.
Supervisor Laux?
So I agree that you need to have this, and I'm going to vote for it. But you said that last year we could choose between the trucks or the spreader and not both, which makes them sound like they were both available. And so does that mean we didn't budget for both necessary types of equipment?
The availability with these, when we first started looking at these, they were anywhere from 12 to 18 months to get these. It just so happens that there is availability now with these two pieces of equipment. But one thing is to remember is that these two pieces of equipment work in conjunction together. So when we reconstruct roads, we use that asphalt paver to lay that asphalt surface. The chip spreader is a preservative for that. So when we pave those roads, we use that chip spreader to seal those roads to preserve that maintenance. So they work both together. We're paving the road and we're preserving.
I agree that you need both. That's not the question. The question is, why was it not budgeted for to replace it, whether or not we had spirit funds?
Well,
is this a question for you? I'm not sure. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I was supposed to thank you.
You're still talking.
This might not be a question for you. Because I only got it in April. Is this not something we budget for long-term so that we could replace the snow trucks and the spreader and the chipper out of the levy?
These are capital purchases. So we do try to put these in for capital, but because we needed the trucks, we knew the age of these vehicles where they were. You hope that they will hang on. Just like your personal vehicle, you hope you don't have these when something like this goes out, like the clutch went out last year. We never saw that coming, and these problems just progressed from that. We didn't think that we knew the age of it. We just thought we could get along a little bit longer. But at the time, we really needed the trucks before this.
So if they had lasted for another year, could we have replaced it out of the levy instead of using spirit funds? Does anybody know this?
It's a capital, so.
Mine is
Yeah.
related to what Crystal is asking. So, thank you, Chairman. So I am going to support this. I have a few questions for you, and it's very related to what Supervisor Laux was asking about. So my questions are related about process, and I know this is new to some of us, what the processes are, but the capital spending plan should be like a rolling 3-year plan. I think you and I talked briefly offline one day about it, and I would expect that you would have all of these, the plow trucks, the chip spreader, the paver, you would have all these in your plan for a certain year, even a certain quarter maybe, ideally, and then if you guessed wrong, hopefully you're guessing wrong because you can delay it another year, delay that purchase another year. And then you're just sliding out your capital replacement plan for those items. But, so I do have a question about, have we historically not budgeted enough in our capital plan, which is I think where Crystal's going, so that we are planning for the inevitable failure of a major piece of equipment? So that's my first question. And then my second question is about the capital maintenance plan for said equipment, because as you know, the age of the equipment will cause the increase in maintenance expenditures over its life. Like was said already, you've spent $100,000 to repair that paver in the hope that it would last a little longer. I personally haven't seen those plans, the capital spending plan, multi-year, and a capital maintenance plan. Do those plans exist for the highway department?
So when I took over my position, the previous commissioner was running vehicles longer, trying to extend those
Sure.
life of it. So when you do that, I mean, one thing is you got to be up on your maintenance, all that. You know, when you push those vehicles, you run them that long. I mean, one thing you got to remember is our vehicles run 24/7 during the winter. They don't stop.
Right.
Only thing that changes is the drivers. So these vehicles have a hard life during the winter.
Yeah.
And when we jump into paving season, it's right back to it.
Totally agree.
So when these vehicles, I'd love to be in the position where we buy 2-3 vehicles a year, we rotate. We're not in that luxury right now. With COVID, we couldn't get parts.
Yeah.
One thing is with this paver, we didn't know parts were, that machine was obsolete. So when we started finding out that, hey, you cannot get these parts, then we realized this is an obsolete machine and we can't keep doing this. You know, I hope we can get to that where we can purchase a couple vehicles a year. We're just not at that point where we can do that right now.
So my follow-up question is, do we have capital spending plans for those multi-year expenditures? And do we have capital maintenance plans and an accompanying capital maintenance schedule that correlates to that plan, so that we as board members can see it and be familiar with it as we go into budgeting?
Yeah, I mean, we have we know what vehicles are coming due for replacement. It's just when COVID came out, I mean, you couldn't get vehicles.
Oh, I get that.
So when we put out to purchase vehicles, we don't have them. So we missed out on a whole purchasing cycle. We went to another year. We're just seeing vehicles that we ordered 4 years ago.
I remember
coming
that,
in.
yeah.
So for 4 years, we're still limping these vehicles. That's why we see such a large increase in our repair budget. The price of equipment, the parts, availability. You know, we've had vehicles, we've got a certain brand of vehicle that is notorious for the frames cracking. I got a beautiful truck that's sitting in our lot. It's got a cracked frame. Can't do anything. We looked at having something done with it. We can't do anything with it. We have three more trucks that same vintage. Those frames could crack at any time.
I get it. I get what you're
And-
saying. My question is really, do you have a documented plan?
As of right now, we're just trying to get as many
Okay.
vehicles in.
I got it. So then, just for my own education, do the paver and the chipper work all year? Okay.
I will answer some on yours, though. The department head usually will meet with the county executive and the director of finance and this and that, and they'll work out something in hopes, whether it be a truck or whatever it may be. So there is probably some kind of plan, but there's nothing laying in the office, a plan to do so.
That's what I was asking. Thank
So,
you.
Supervisor Swan.
Bob, just a couple of questions. The CAT is, you say that, does that pave 12-foot width?
So those in there are they're just examples that we
Okay,
pulled up.
but you got a 12-foot, so it goes down one side of the road, it paves 12-foot width and then comes back to?
It's a 10-foot screed.
Oh, it's a 10-foot.
Yep, so we
Okay,
can
10.
pay 10 feet wide.
10.
So when we do a road, I mean, we may put extensions on, pull the road in one pass.
Okay.
Or if it's a 22-foot road, we might pull two 11-foot lanes.
All right, sounds good. And since we seem to be talking about both here, the end tire, chip spreader, are you getting the standard or the big?
It's the largest one we can get for
So
width.
30-foot conveyor belt versus 24?
Correct.
And you get it, is there a price difference much, or is it
The prices are relatively the
minimal?
same.
Okay. And the last question is, are the units made in America, and do you believe you can get replacement parts easier for these units than the Volvo and what you had before?
Yeah, I mean, already, I mean, what we're looking at, I mean, parts are readily available and locally sourced here in Wisconsin.
Okay, good, thank you.
Supervisor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On our tour last night, we went and visited all the places where this county board was generous and gave money to fund many different projects out of the Spirit Fund. I'm kind of happy to see that we're taking care of some of our own needs out of the Spirit Fund. We didn't have to help out all the others that came forward. Great projects, and it was fun to see everything getting done. So I'm kind of pleased to see that we're trying to get some of that funding to help balance us out a little bit. And we always keep hearing about the shortfalls in every department and how we're tightening our belts and so forth moving forward. And we got a budget session coming up. I believe there's only 3 counties in Wisconsin that don't have the 0.5% sales tax. Are we saving our constituents by not having the 0.5%, or are we cutting them a little bit short by not being able to provide all of the services that we could provide with it? I'm just telling everybody to think about it. Just a thought. Take care. Thank you.
Supervisor Halber.
Fully support updating our equipment. I know that our men and women need absolutely every advantage that we can give them when it comes to using equipment that works. My question is I have 2 questions really. One, you said that you hadn't been able to get equipment for 4 years. Does that mean that equipment has been purchased and it hasn't come in, or we just haven't spent that money?
It's purchased, hasn't come
Okay.
in.
And then my next question is can I count on you to include, if this equipment is good for, let's say, 10 years, in your upcoming budget for our budget session, at least a 1/10% of this budget in your line items so that we can take a look at how we can pay for this in the future without having to go through Spirit funds?
Sure.
Thank
I mean,
you.
that's, it typically we will put these in our capital.
Sure.
But like I said, it's just the inflation part of these.
Right.
These pieces of equipment have just blown up, and so.
I just
But
was
yes.
asking if we can line item it
Sure.
specifically. Thank you.
Supervisor Gustafson.
Call the question.
The question has been called.
Can we just do it in voice vote?
You need a second for that?
Yep.
Second.
Can we do it by voice?
Okay, this has got to be 2/3. Motion was made and seconded.
We're just voting on calling
What now? I'm going to try it by voice, but it needs 2/3, so if it don't go, then we'll have to do it the other way. So, all those in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. It's carried. Now we're back to going ahead and approving. Let's see, I gotta find where I am here now to get it.
This vote, this resolution.
Resolution 043.
That's 700,000, right? Okay, so the motion is for the $700,000 Spirit Fund for the purchase of a road paver. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Carried. Authorization of $505,000 from the Spirit Fund for the purchase of a chip spreader. Supervisor Cox.
Just a minute. I'd like to make a motion that 044-10-2024, a resolution authorizing $505,000 from the Spirit Fund for the purchase of a chip spreader. 10 people and 10 with zero against voted
Second.
for that at ARPA. So you
Second.
know, we've already had the discussion.
And a second's been made. Supervisor Gustafson.
call the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll call the question.
Question has been called.
Attaboy.
Motion is made and seconded. All those in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Carried. So now we're voting on authorizing of $505,000 from the Spirit Fund for the purchase of a chip spreader. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Carried. Appropriation of $400,000 from the Spirit Fund County Government Projects for the demolition of an airport hangar. Supervisor Gustafson.
Want to read this one? Read it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we appropriate $400,000 from the Spirit Fund County Government Projects for the demolition of an airport hangar.
And it has been seconded. Supervisor Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, we're knocking down a building has too much deferred maintenance to save. Why over the years haven't we maintained this building, number one? And number two, once we knock this building down, this is gonna be a prime site on the airport for redevelopment. Who gets to redevelop that site? And are they only gonna be paying 25 cents a square foot for a ground lease? Shouldn't we amortize the cost of the demolition into the ground lease rate to any new prospective owner of the improvements that they would build on it? Or am I just gonna get blank stares about this?
We have a gentleman coming up that's going to answer right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Supervisor Swan. So the hangar in question was constructed in 1953. It served its purpose very well up until recent years, and ultimately it's been assessed. So I guess I'll answer your question about amortizing the demolition cost of a facility we own to a prospective developer that may develop that land parcel in its area. I don't know that too many developers are going to want to pay to remove our hangars that are in poor condition as part of constructing a new facility on that parcel. However, yes, our commercial land lease rate for bare, non-improved aeronautical ground is 25 cents a square foot annually, and that is a rate that's set by county ordinance. So I believe it's our responsibility, and I take no pleasure in coming to the county board for funding to demolish a hangar facility. We'd much rather be constructing new hangar facilities, but this one has been assessed 3 times, starting in 2020 with our master plan update. Given its condition and its location logistically in that land area on the north side, it had already been identified for future removal. And then in 2023, with the facility's condition assessment, was rated in poor condition, and subsequent to that has suffered some pretty bad storm damage this year. So for well over 70 years, it served the airport very well. Unfortunately, in the near term, it was already planned for removal, and we'd hoped to have longer on that facility than we have, and it is something that is just in need of demolition.
Okay, so if I could follow up, just, are you expecting that there will be a private party that would develop that site then into a new hangar, or would it be the county that will develop a hangar there?
So that site, if you look at the diagram from the master plan that was included on one of the attachments, along with the old terminal site, are 2 areas that we're identifying for private development primarily. So on the old terminal site, we've been working now for several years on a redevelopment plan for that site. We have a rough redevelopment plan, and we're working with some folks that are potentially interested in constructing using private capital to construct on those sites. So this would free up that space, kind of make it more of an attractive parcel for future development, the space where this hangar currently exists. Much
Right.
like the old terminal site is now a greenfield site with an apron adjacent to it that is prime for redevelopment.
Are we precluded from amortizing that cost into a ground lease?
I may defer to our finance director. However, I don't, again, adding, let's say it's $400,000 into someone that
Yeah,
is
but
looking to develop
it's a
on
prime
this property.
site, okay? So I'm just saying, we got into this before where, the rents for the new 20 hangars were wound up in the consent agenda, and I missed the fact that we had a $350 per unit rent on a brand-new hangar building that I objected to. You're aware of that. I'm just wondering, is there a way that we can recover some of the costs that we're laying out here? And yeah, you can call it ARPA funds, a Spirit Fund, you call it a grant, but really, it's, we reclassified those funds as lost revenue, so they're, and funds washed them through Parkview, as Supervisor Cox so eloquently described prior. So, I'm just trying to say, it seems like the market rent for an airport lease is low, and we're subsidizing these rents. I just trying to get to a place where we can start charging true market rent for the facilities we're building. Thank you.
Supervisor Cox.
Enough, we voted at 8-0 at 400,000, okay? We even amended it because it was higher. I think what I would do is call a question at this point and just vote this straight up for what it's worth, 400.
Motion made and seconded for calling the question. Who seconded that?
Somebody over here. I think it was Don.
All those in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Pardon?
Now on the motion.
Wait. I had to back up to read it. So now we're voting on the appropriation of the $400,000 from the Spirit Fund County Government project for demolition of an airport hangar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Nay. The ayes have it.
There you go.
Approving the Spirit Fund allocation, government identified county project funds and earning interest be allocated to the county government category. Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of 046-10-2024 to bring it to the floor.
Second. Motion made and seconded.
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to offer an amendment to this resolution.
You got that, didn't you?
Start on line 35. I'll read that. I'll start with 2024 be allocated to the county government project category, period, and delete the rest of that sentence. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I might explain, basically what they're saying there is they want the interest anytime after November 1st, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, to be applied to the general fund instead of staying in the county projects Spirit Fund. We got to go back, because we've already made a decision on this. We can go back to Resolution 167, and that was January of 2023 when the commission was formed. And it basically says, interest accrued on the ARPA Spirit funds before the enactment of this resolution shall also be transferred to the Spirit Fund and spent in the same manner as the principal amount. So what I'm suggesting is let's let that fund keep earning interest, and the commission will then benefit from that interest earned and apply it to these county projects. If you shut the interest off, we only have a defined amount, and that's going to limit what county projects we can approve. When you put the interest into the general fund, does anybody knows where that interest goes or where it's applied? I don't, but perhaps, I mean, that's the bit of a dilemma. So I would ask you to support the amendment.
Just done. Can you restate? what the
Sure.
amendment is?
Sure.
Amendment?
Line 35. You with me, Cassie?
I am.
Okay, put a period after the word category. And delete any subsequent earned interest be applied to the Winnebago County General Fund in accordance to standard county practice. That would be deleted.
I believe we have a second. But okay, Supervisor Buck on the amendment? Supervisor Powers on the amendment? Oh, sorry. Thought you said no.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe, if we had to count it up, the number of hours that were spent on the ARPA Commission, probably thousands of hours, the committee members, but more of the staff time that was spent on the ARPA Commission. If I may, can I ask Supervisor Fari a question?
If he wants to answer it.
I'd be happy to.
Sure.
Is your intention here to continue the ARPA Commission?
That is an excellent question. Okay, let's assume my amendment is approved. And then the next question in the months coming forward, it'll be up to the chairman to decide whether or not he wants to continue the ARPA Commission or to disband it. If it's disbanded, well, then this whole thing is a moot point, right? Because there would no longer be a commission overseeing the disbursement of these funds. So we need to assume that the ARPA Commission, at least in the short term, perhaps longer, will continue. That would be my answer.
All right. With that being said, I would urge the county board supervisors to watch the last ARPA Commission. The community members on there, have stated they've volunteered their time for this commission, and basically said, hey, we've went through this process, and by the way, this has been one of the most transparent processes in the United States, where we had a huge committee have public input on this. We gave money to entities that, in some counties or in most counties, just a few people decided where that money was going to go. So the will of the public members on the commission were to say, let's disband this, let's move on. And I will point out, which was said by Supervisor Nelson, finally that we're going to spend some money on the county needs. I could just point to the David Albrecht building that needs new windows. That's a couple $1 million. We just heard from the highway department, in Winnebago County, we seem to, run vehicles until we need to replace them. There's a lot of needs in the county. And I respectfully, Supervisor Fari, I think we need to move on with this, and I will not be supporting your amendment. Thank you.
Supervisor Powers on the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think so because I'm responding to something that Vice Chairman Fari had said in his explanation about monies that are in the ARPA fund still earning interest and being used. A couple of months ago, we heard that there were projects that had not yet received their money. Has it all gone out? And what's earning interest now in the ARPA fund that you were talking about going forward?
Should I answer that? Or?
Either that or Paul. Put on the finance director.
Okay, let's take, you had 33 million you started out with. You had two ledgers, two different pages. One side was for community projects. That was 16 million plus. That's all been allocated except for 1.4 million in interest and I believe 152,000 in principal. That money, based on this resolution, will now be moved over to the other side of the ledger, county projects. So that'll be all the projects we're talking about, trucks, pavers, whatever county functions they need. Totally support that. The only issue is whether or not we're gonna keep putting the interest, which is about 10 million. So if you transfer the interest over and the money that's currently in that side of the ledger is right around 8 million. So you're gonna have about $10 million drawing interest until the commission decides to appropriate that and bring it forward to the county board. Does that answer your question?
Well, and that 10 million that's currently drawing interest is not money that's still kind of waiting to be given out to groups that have already been a lot, because a few months ago, Peter.
No, that's on the other side of the ledger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
pretty
all,
much.
that's all been appropriated. I mean, it's all been given
Yeah,
out.
right.
The checks in the mail, they got it. Okay, that's all I wondered. Thank you.
Generally speaking, yes.
I think it's on, is it on?
Yep, you're on.
Okay, there's, like Supervisor Farley said, there's 50% which was county, 50% which was government. Of the ones that the ARPA Commission dealt with was the 16.5 million for them. They have appropriated everything but $152,000. The money that has actually been spent is 11.7 million. So that is what has been spent. What has not been spent, one of the projects was land water conservation. That was $3 million. We spent to date 14,000 because that plan was supposed to go out 8 to 10 years. So it's appropriated, but it's not spent. So that's going to continue earning interest for that project. There are other ones that have not totally been spent. That was Nova Counseling, I believe, have not sent me their paperwork yet, and they have not requested the funds. And I believe it was Oshkosh Greater Habitat. So hopefully that answers your question on what's left.
Supervisor Schellinger on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Fari, or Vice Chairman Fari, I think I have a question for you. Is your intention that all of the subsequent interest, including that interest after November 1st, would also go to the county government project category?
Yes, of the 10 million.
Okay.
I think I should make it clear, in my opinion, the appropriated funds, such as Land Water Conservation Department, the 3 million, that's been appropriated to a department. So once that is done, in my opinion, the interest earned on that should stay with the county, general government. I'm only referring to the 10 million in total that's been transferred or will be transferred over to county projects. That gives the commission a little more flexibility.
Okay, then I would suggest that that your amendment needs one further deletion, and that would be on lines 34, the words prior to October 31st, and then on lines 35, 2024, there, so that it reads, all interest accrued in the Spirit Fund be allocated to the county government project. Maybe I'm misreading it, but if your intention is that, if your intention in the amendment is to also account for the interest accrued after November 1st, I think that leaves that question unresolved.
Excellent point. Is that a friendly amendment?
Friendly amendment.
Sure, yeah.
I accept.
There will be a friendly amendment. Supervisor Gustafson.
Chair, call the question.
Second. Question has been called. Who seconded that? Motion was made and seconded to call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Nay. I would say the ayes have it.
why we decided to not vote by electronic means anymore. It seems like all our votes are being called, you know, and I think we're getting into a shouting match potentially when we don't start recording our votes. So,
I didn't think so. I thought it
well,
was pretty.
maybe not tonight, but, you know, we may come to some where we did have 1/2 vote tonight. Maybe it wouldn't have been decided any differently, but I'm just saying.
I think we had two people that voted no to that one.
I'm just trying to make a point, that's all.
If anybody wants it, all they gotta say
No,
is that you
all right, I'm just-
want that. Anytime. Anyone that requests
All
it,
right.
we do it.
Thank you.
So now we'll be voting on the amendment. On the amendment. So all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Nay. Carried. The ayes have it. So do you want to read that resolution?
On the resolution amended?
As amended, yes.
Oh, you don't? Cassie has it? You want to just read it to make sure that everybody understands what's happening now? Go right up there in front, Cassie. You're not fair. This is what you'll be voting on now.
So, beginning with 34, it would be it further resolved that all interest accrued in spirit funds be allocated to the county government project category, period.
Can we have an e-vote for this one, please?
Okay. You want to have a vote on it? We can vote, but we're not sure how it's going to read up there, so, but we can do the vote. Okay, so, yes if you're in favor, no if you're not.
Now you're voting on the main motion,
We're voting on the main motion.
As amended.
As amended. Don't forget after you vote to put that say. Judge Barry, you vote?
Yes.
Put save in the bottom.
Oh, sorry, yep. Technology, I'm telling you, you know what I mean?
It didn't come through, I think you gotta get it.
Oh, do it again, all right. How's that?
Just like a 100%. Yeah.
What? 30-1 with one absent, so it passed.
All right. So we can show it. My mic is on again, please.
Awarding the sale of $8,120,000 general obligation promissory notes. Supervisor Cox.
Just a second. Just a second, I'm getting to it. I'd like to make approve the resolution 47-10-2024 the resolution awarding the sale of 8,120,000 general obligation promissory notes.
Second, Powers.
Thank you.
Made and seconded. Supervisor Cox, we'll have him give a little talk before we vote.
This is Justin Fisher at the podium, and Justin Fisher will review the sale of the notes as he did with our little PNF meeting just before this board. We passed 5-0 the approval of the notes, and expect that that shouldn't have any problem passing the board. Would you continue, Mr. Fisher?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So as Mr. Cox just mentioned, we went out for the bond sale this morning, so I'll go through the final results. In your packets, there should be my presentation. It's got the Bear logo on it. I'll just kind of run through that, and if there's any questions, let me know. So the issue summary, general obligation promissory notes in the amount of $8,120,000. This issuance will close November 7th of 2024. This is a 10-year financing, so similar to years past. April 1, 2025 to 2034. First interest payment, April 1, 2025, so next year's first payment. Callable October 1, 2031, or any date thereafter, so that's when you can look to refinance or prepay it. Moody's did affirm the AA1 bond credit rating, so myself, Paul, Jamie, we all kind of participated on a rating call with Moody's, shared all the latest and greatest information with them. They came back and affirmed that the rating for the county is a AA1, which is one of the highest bond credit ratings you can receive. So that was great news to get from them. When we went out to the market this morning, we received a interest rate of 3.34%, and if you recall, what was projected was a 3.75%. So getting the better than projected interest rate, you know, what does that mean from a cost savings? It's about $85,000 by getting the lower than projected rate that was shared with the board and PNF back in September. So that's all good news there. If you go to page 3, there's a lot of numbers on this page. Left side of the page, that's your existing debt payments on an annual basis. The middle of the page, that's what we're talking about tonight. The right side, that's factoring in hypothetical future borrowings. You know, we have used 10 million in the past. We want to model in a little bit larger at 15, just to see how things look. It's going to be ultimately up to you on what's going to be approved. You know, as I've said, 10 million is what we used in the past. It's 8,120,000 this year. It's been different amounts in prior years. And then the right side of the page is ultimately what the debt service may look like in future years, and targeted a 3-cent reduction to the debt service mill rate. So that's all good there. When we go to the last few pages, that's the Moody's rating report. In there, it's very similar to years past. The one thing that they did note in a credit strength is the growing local economy. Many of you know the valuation for the county has been going up pretty substantially over the last several years. You know, a lot to do with inflation, but ultimately it has impacted home values and so forth within the county, so they view that as a favorable position. So otherwise, you're in an extremely good financial position, not only looking at the financing today. I mean, you received the great rate because of your good bond credit rating, but looking into the future, you're able to get these capital investments done within your county and not have, you know, modeling out, not having any type of major impact to the tax rate. So you're in good shape, and it's been years in the planning to get to this point. So congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just request a roll call on the final resolution. Thank you.
I had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir, for coming here tonight and explaining the bond. This AA, what is it? An A, big A, little a, and 1?
AA1 is what they consider it.
I don't really know the bond ratings that well. What could it be, an A, B, C, you know?
So AA1 is the second highest rating you can receive
Okay.
of any entity. AAA is considered the top.
So we're not AAA in Winnebago County. Is this bond rated based on on the full faith and credit of the Winnebago County taxpayer more so, or the underlying collateral of the bond?
The unlimited authority that you have, and the authority and of the taxpayers. So it's a very secure type financing.
Well, but the buyer, are they looking at the underlying collateral of the bond, or are they looking at just Winnebago County as being solid?
Solid.
Okay, so you're not looking, the buyer would not be looking at the underlying collateral of the bond?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, they're looking at that you have an unlimited taxing authority related to repaying this debt. And that's ultimately what Moody's is evaluating, is saying, you know, all these different factors, whether your fund balance is good, are you growing, how much debt do you have, et cetera, all those different factors come into play. And ultimately, you know, some of the factors aren't in your control.
Right. So my reason for asking that question is that the collateral in this bond, a lot of it involves, you know, county buildings and repairs being done to county buildings. We have a $90 million repair bill staring in the face in this county over the next 10, 15, 20 years, okay? Of which this is a portion of that. My question is what happens if the underlying collateral of the bond goes to 10 cents on a dollar if some of our buildings are no longer occupied?
Again, that doesn't really factor into your rating. You do have, if you do have a lot of capital projects and you do need to finance a lot of that, we've already been kind of discussing that with Moody's.
Right.
And the strategy of implementing it over a period of time has been discussed.
Because if we consolidate facilities going forward in this county, some of these buildings that we're repairing may be worth a lot less than what we think they are at this point right now. They may be unoccupied. They may sell for 10 cents on the dollar. And then if I'm an investor looking at that, I'm really just looking at the full faith and credit of the taxpayer and not anything to do with this bond's being spent on. But I guess that's what you said.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. I want to, part of the documents that were provided with this, I found very informative. So I don't know who was responsible for that, but I certainly did appreciate it very much. Thank you. Hopefully you all read it because it's a lot of good information in there.
Supervisor Hanson.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted a recorded vote as well. Thank you.
I have no speakers left. So that's a good sign. No one on Zoom, am I correct? So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oh, I'm sorry, you're correct. I apologize. Supervisor Gustafson asked for that, yes. Vote on your machines.
I see.
$29 to 2 with 1 abstention. So that's passed.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Fari, or who made it? I heard
Mr. Chairman,
someone.
I move to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. We are adjourned.